Welcome to Documents to Sleep, a place where science and imagination meet, where curiosity guides you gently into the quiet corners of history and nature. Tonight, we're going to explore a question as vast as time itself. What if the story of humanity is not the first chapter ever written on this planet? Take a deep breath. Dim the lights. Allow yourself to sink comfortably into your chair or bed, knowing that nothing here will rush you, nothing will startle you. This is a journey not of fear, but of wonder. A slow drift through ideas, through evidence, and through the subtle whispers of the earth itself. Imagine, for a moment, the earth in its earliest days. No cities, no roads, no monuments. Just swirling clouds, molten rock, and the quiet patience of a planet shaping itself. Time moves differently here. A million years is just a heartbeat. A billion years passes like a sigh. And through this immense stretch, life begins in the smallest of ways, microscopic, fragile, almost imperceptible. Yet even the tiniest beginnings leave traces. And it is these traces that, slowly, build the story of everything. As we embark on this exploration, remember, we are not racing against the clock. We are walking beside it. The earth does not hurry. Neither should we. Let your mind drift along with the narrative, allowing each thought to settle softly. Consider your own existence as one small ripple in a vast ocean of time. And now, let us begin with the very foundation of that ocean, the age of our planet. The Earth, as we know it today, is approximately 4.5 billion years old. To place that in perspective, if we compress the entire age of the Earth into a single year, humanity itself would appear only in the final minute of December 31st. Before that, the planet endured unimaginably long epochs of change, transformation, and quiet perseverance. In its earliest moments, the Earth was a molten sphere, glowing with heat, bombarded by countless asteroids and cosmic debris. The surface was inhospitable, yet even then, the seeds of life were quietly forming. Chemical reactions in deep oceans, in hydrothermal vents, began weaving the earliest threads of biology. Single-celled organisms emerged. They multiplied slowly. They adapted. They endured. For nearly 2 billion years, life existed only in these simple forms. No forests, no creatures of scale. Yet these tiny organisms shaped the planet's atmosphere, gradually producing oxygen, slowly transforming the Earth from a hostile world into one capable of supporting complex life. Imagine a planet completely silent, save for the subtle movements of water, the rumble of distant volcanoes, and the whisper of wind over barren landscapes. All of this forming the stage for everything to come. Around 600 million years ago, the first multicellular organisms appeared. The Earth was beginning to blossom with life that was more intricate, more interconnected. Soft-bodied creatures glided through the oceans, simple plants spread across shallow waters, and the foundations of ecosystems were laid. It was a slow awakening, as if the planet itself were stretching after an unimaginable sleep. Then came the Cambrian explosion, roughly 540 million years ago, a period in which life diversified at a breathtaking pace. In the oceans, organisms developed hard shells, eyes, complex sensory organs in varied forms. Predators and prey emerged, each influencing the evolution of the other. It was a quiet drama unfolding over millions of years, with no audience to witness it. The Earth itself held its breath as life became richer, more varied, more beautiful. Over the following hundreds of millions of years, plants began to colonize the land. Forests appeared, first small, then vast. Insects followed, flying through the air, crawling along the ground. Amphibians ventured out of the water, evolving into the first reptiles. Time moved at its own pace, indifferent to our human sense of urgency. And yet, even in this distant prehistory, the story of extinction was never far away. Massive volcanic eruptions, shifting continents, changing climates, asteroid impacts, the Earth repeatedly reset itself. Species flourished, then vanished, leaving only traces in rock and fossil. Life adapted, changed course, survived. Some forms we may never know, lost forever. Other forms became the ancestors of what would eventually walk the land, fly through the air, and swim in the oceans. The rise and fall of these early ecosystems remind us how fragile any civilization, any species, truly is. Even the most complex and abundant life can be erased over geological time. And yet the traces of these past worlds remain, not in monuments or buildings, but in the subtle chemistry of rocks, in the layers of sediment, in the isotopes locked within the Earth's crust. Consider the tiny, enduring organisms, cyanobacteria that first produced oxygen, stromatolites growing in shallow waters, their layered structures preserving a memory of life's earliest efforts. These were the pioneers, the quiet architects of an Earth capable of sustaining complexity. And they endured, silently shaping the world for billions of years. Fast forward to the age of the dinosaurs, roughly 230 million years ago. The Earth was a very different place, warm, lush, and teeming with giant reptiles, some of which dominated the land, the air, and the seas. Forests were dense, volcanoes active, and oceans vibrant with life. The sheer scale and diversity of life were breathtaking. Yet, even the dinosaurs eventually succumbed to cataclysmic events, including massive asteroid impacts and volcanic upheavals. Entire species vanished, leaving the Earth to start anew. It is in moments like these that we begin to understand the fragility of civilizations. If even the mightiest of species can be erased from the planet, what hope do we have of leaving a lasting mark? Or perhaps, if life can vanish so completely, might it have happened before? Could an intelligent civilization, ancient beyond imagination, have risen and fallen long before humanity even existed? Could the Earth, in all its patience and vastness, have quietly hosted another chapter of intelligence, leaving only subtle traces we have yet to recognize? As we reflect on this possibility, imagine walking across the Earth as it might have been, millions or even billions of years ago. The air, the soil, the oceans, all filled with life forms utterly foreign to us. The wind carries whispers of existence we cannot comprehend. And underfoot, in sediments and rocks, lie the faintest hints of worlds that might have existed and then disappeared. Earth's history is a slow, deliberate story, written in stone, water, and atmosphere. Every layer, every fossil, every chemical signature is a word in a narrative spanning eons. It is patient, it is vast, and it challenges our human perception of time, reminding us that even the grandest monuments or achievements of humanity are but a blink in the grand chronicle of the planet. Consider this as you settle further into your chair or bed, your body relaxing, your mind open. We are about to explore the mysteries of civilizations that may have preceded us, civilizations that could have arisen, flourished, and vanished without leaving the kinds of traces we usually imagine. The evidence, if it exists, would be subtle, hidden in the chemistry of rocks, in isotopic signatures, in deep geological strata. And it is exactly this subtlety that makes the question so fascinating, so humbling, and so profoundly mysterious. As the Earth slowly turned, through eons of volcanic activity, ice ages, and shifting continents, life adapted. Some forms endured, others disappeared entirely. The planet itself is the ultimate archivist, storing memories not in libraries, but in its very crust. It holds the potential clues to stories we have yet to imagine, stories older than our species, older than history as we know it. And so, with these reflections, we begin the journey into what might have been. We will explore evidence, scientific hypotheses, and speculative ideas, all with a calm mind, a curious heart, and a peaceful spirit. We will travel not just through space, but through time, considering civilizations that may have existed and the subtle ways they might have shaped the Earth before us. Let your mind drift with these thoughts as we now enter the first chapter of our exploration, the possibility of forgotten time. Beneath our feet, the ground itself is a slow-moving ocean of memory. Each grain of sand, each layer of rock, is a fragment of the planet's autobiography, but the Earth is an imperfect storyteller. It rewrites its own pages, folds them, erases them, buries them beneath new chapters of stone. If an entire civilization once stood upon this world millions of years before us, what remains of it now? Perhaps nothing more than traces so faint that even the most patient scientist would overlook them, mistaking them for the random patterns of geology. The planet is not cruel, only indifferent. Wind, rain, ice, and the steady movement of tectonic plates perform their work without intent. They do not mean to hide the past, they simply continue the rhythm of nature. Imagine a city, one of our own, abandoned and left to time. After 100 years, the windows break, the walls crumble, plants creep through the cracks. After 1,000 years, trees rise where streets once stood. After 10,000, the foundations erode, buried beneath shifting soil. In 1 million years, only the faintest chemical shadows would remain, traces of metals, fragments of glass transformed to dust. In 10 million, even those would vanish, drawn down into the slow recycling of the planet's crust. Now stretch that thought across hundreds of millions of years. Continents drift, collide, and tear apart. Mountains rise and crumble back into the sea. In such cycles, entire worlds could bloom and fade, their memories lost not to malice, but to the quiet persistence of geological time. The Earth has many ways of forgetting. Erosion wears away what was once solid. Subduction drags whole landscapes beneath the crust, melting them into magma. Glaciers grind the surface like sandpaper. Volcanoes bury evidence beneath molten rock. Even the ocean, that ancient cradle of life, swallows and dissolves what enters its depths. This is the essence of forgotten time, the vast stretches of history in which the planet's own activity becomes the author, editor, and destroyer of its records. To read the full story of Earth, we would have to look not just at fossils and rocks, but at what is missing, at the blank spaces between chapters. Scientists call these gaps unconformities, layers where entire ages are absent from the geological record. Some of these gaps span tens or even hundreds of millions of years. Imagine reading a book where every few pages are torn out, where centuries vanish in an instant. We assume continuity, but what if those missing pages once held something extraordinary? In deserts and mountain ranges, in the deep cores drilled from the seabed, geologists see the scars of these forgotten epochs. Each break, each missing layer is a silent question. What happened here? Was it simple erosion or something more? We tend to think of civilizations as permanent, but permanence is an illusion born from short lives. Even our oldest human monuments, the pyramids, Stonehenge, the Great Wall, are younger than a blink in geological time. If the Earth's history were a single day, all of recorded civilization would occupy less than a fraction of a second before midnight. So when we ask whether an earlier civilization might have existed, we are asking whether that fraction of a second could have happened long before us, perhaps in another turn of the planet's deep clock. Consider the subtle clues a vanished civilization might leave behind. Metals refined from ore might re-enter the ground as oxides. Plastic would degrade, but microscopic residues could linger in sediments. Concrete would crumble, its lime and silica returning to the soil. Even the radio signals we send into space would fade, absorbed by cosmic background noise in less than 1 million years. From the viewpoint of eternity, human presence is delicate, a breath upon the surface of a mirror. Yet the Earth has preserved hints of earlier catastrophes. In layers of clay and rock, scientists find sudden changes in carbon ratios, spikes in iridium, traces of mass extinction. These are fingerprints of upheaval, but also possibly of transformation. If intelligence had once thrived here, long before us, its end might look very similar to these natural cataclysms. A civilization built on technology might alter the planet's chemistry, releasing carbon, changing isotopic balances, redistributing minerals. If that civilization then vanished, its memory could survive only in the strata, encoded as a subtle anomaly in the geological record. To recognize such a trace would require knowing exactly what to look for, and accepting that we might never be certain of what we find. Picture yourself standing on a windswept plain. The ground beneath you has been many things: ocean floor, desert, forest, mountain. Beneath the soil lie layers upon layers of ancient worlds, each one erased and rewritten by time. You could dig for years, for centuries, and still find only fragments of stories. Perhaps a fossilized leaf, a ripple of sandstone once touched by water, or a faint band of dark rock marking an ancient extinction. If an intelligent species had walked here before, what would remain? Not their cities, not their machines, but perhaps a layer of unusual minerals, a sudden shift in atmospheric composition, or a thin band of sediment rich in synthetic compounds. To us, it might look like nothing more than a peculiar geological curiosity. We might catalog it, name it, and move on, never realizing we had just touched the echo of another world. It is humbling to think how fragile evidence becomes over deep time. The fossils we find are miracles, rare alignments of circumstance where life and geology briefly cooperated. Most organisms leave no trace at all. Most events vanish into silence. Even now, entire epochs are missing from our understanding. The rock record tells us about the great extinctions, but not always about what came immediately before or after. It shows us hints of climates, but rarely the faces of the beings that felt the sun upon their skin. Between every known age, there lies a vast darkness, an interval of forgotten time where anything might have happened. Sometimes, when scientists uncover an object or a formation that defies easy classification, speculation awakens. Could this be a relic of something older than we know? Most of the time, the answer is mundane, a quirk of nature, a geological oddity. But the very act of asking connects us to something ancient in ourselves, the need to remember what the earth has forgotten. In quiet moments when we step away from the noise of the present, we can almost feel it, the weight of all that time, pressing gently around us. Every rock, every grain of sand, has witnessed more than we can imagine. Mountains once taller than the Himalayas have turned to dust. Seas have dried, returned, and dried again. Species have appeared, thrived, vanished, and been replaced by others equally brief. If intelligence arose more than once, perhaps it too followed this rhythm: creation, flourishing, collapse, renewal. Maybe consciousness is not unique to us, but a pattern the universe repeats when conditions are right. And maybe the Earth, in its long memory and longer forgetfulness, has hosted that miracle before. The thought need not disturb us. It can bring a kind of peace, the knowledge that even if we are not the first, we are part of something continuous, a chain of awareness stretching through time. Every age learns, dreams, and eventually returns to the dust, making space for what comes next. In this sense, forgotten time is not an emptiness but a promise. It reminds us that existence is cyclical, that creation follows destruction, that memory and oblivion dance endlessly together. Our task is not to conquer time, but to listen to it, to hear the faint echoes in stone and water, to feel the patience of a planet that has seen everything come and go. As you breathe slowly, imagine those echoes around you. The gentle hiss of the ocean could be the whisper of ancient tides. The wind moving through trees might be carrying fragments of stories older than language. Each sound, each rhythm, is a reminder that the Earth has been alive far longer than our species can grasp. And as you rest, picture the continents drifting, the mountains eroding, the seas rising and falling. Imagine civilizations, real or imagined, blooming like flowers in spring, then fading as the seasons of the world change. Their memory merges with the planet itself, becoming part of the quiet pulse beneath your feet. The next time you look at a stone, remember, it has already seen more worlds than you can dream. Its silence is not emptiness, but experience. Its stillness is the record of time so vast that our minds can barely hold it. Perhaps somewhere within that silence, the story of a forgotten civilization still sleeps, not lost, but waiting, patient as the earth itself, for someone willing to listen. When we look at the earth with modern eyes, we see a world mapped and measured, its mountains named, its oceans crossed by satellites. Yet scattered across this familiar planet are places that whisper a different story, sights and objects that seem, at first glance, to belong to another age entirely. They are the Earth's riddles, fragments that invite wonder and occasionally speculation. Each one reminds us how little we truly know about our own past. Imagine walking through a desert at dawn. The air is cool, the sand still holds the night's chill, and in the soft light, shapes begin to appear, enormous stones cut and stacked with impossible precision. They rise from the earth like frozen waves, silent witnesses to forgotten builders. This is the feeling that accompanies every encounter with an ancient anomaly, the quiet question that hangs in the air: how? Take the pyramids of Egypt. To us they seem eternal, but even these monuments are newcomers in the grand story of the planet. They stand at the intersection of history and mystery, products of human genius, yet still capable of stirring the imagination toward something deeper. Each block, each alignment with the stars, hints at a relationship between humanity and the cosmos that feels older than any civilization we know. When we stand before them, we sense both our connection to the ancient world and our distance from its secrets. Travel east, across the deserts and seas, to a site half buried by time, Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey. Long before the pyramids, before writing, before cities, people gathered here to carve massive pillars from stone. Some are decorated with animals and abstract symbols. For thousands of years the site lay hidden, preserved beneath layers of earth as if deliberately covered, a message left in waiting. Its discovery in the late 20th century forced archaeologists to reconsider the birth of organized society. It showed that complex architecture and shared belief existed far earlier than anyone expected. Göbekli Tepe is not proof of a lost advanced civilization, but it is evidence of something equally profound, that human imagination, ritual, and cooperation reach back farther than our textbooks once allowed. Across the globe, on a small island in the Pacific, lie the ruins of Nan Madol, often called the Venice of Micronesia. Built from giant basalt columns that form artificial islands and canals, the site seems to float upon the ocean itself. No written records explain who first constructed it or how its massive stones were moved. Local legends speak of powerful beings who could command the stones to fly. Scientists, studying its geology and structure, point to ingenious engineering and social organization rather than forgotten magic. Yet standing amid the tidal silence, one feels that both explanations, mythic and practical, may hold a kind of truth. For every human monument is both a physical creation and a dream given form. Some anomalies lie hidden beneath the sea. Off the coast of Japan, near Yonaguni Island, divers discovered a series of underwater terraces and steps carved into solid rock. Sharp angles, flat surfaces, and symmetrical patterns give the impression of a submerged city. Debate continues. Are these formations the work of human hands or natural fracturing shaped by ocean currents? Perhaps they are both natural cliffs later adapted by ancient settlers, or geological art shaped so perfectly that the mind insists on seeing design. Whatever the answer, the Yonaguni structures remind us how thin the boundary can be between nature's geometry and human architecture. In India, within the granite hills of Karnataka, lie the ruins of Hampi, a city of temples and towers that once shimmered with gold and music. Though it flourished only centuries ago, its scale and artistry suggest deeper roots, echoes of older patterns repeated through time. Civilizations rise, build, decline, and build again, often upon the same sacred ground. The stones remember the rhythm even when the people change. Then there are the smaller mysteries, the so-called out-of-place artifacts that appear to mock our timelines. An iron hammer encased in rock, a spark plug-like object found in ancient clay, microscopic metallic spheres embedded in mineral deposits. Most turn out to be misinterpretations or natural coincidences. Some are modern intrusions, carried into older layers by the slow churn of soil and water. Yet the fascination they inspire reveals something about us. We long to find ourselves reflected in the deep past, to believe that intelligence and invention are not unique to our moment. Science demands caution, and rightly so. Each extraordinary claim must rest on evidence that survives scrutiny. But imagination has its own kind of truth. By wondering whether others once walked this earth before us, we sharpen our curiosity, we learn to look more closely, to ask better questions of the stones and fossils that speak so quietly. Consider South America, where vast lines are etched into the desert near Nazca. From the ground they seem random, from the air they form perfect shapes, animals, spirals, geometric designs stretching for miles. Made by removing the dark surface stones to reveal lighter earth beneath, they could be paths of ceremony, offerings to deities, or calendars aligned with celestial events. Some dreamers imagine them as messages to travelers from the sky. Scientists see them as a dialogue between humans and their environment, a way to connect heaven and earth. Either way, the Nazca lines remind us that meaning can survive even when language and memory are lost. Farther north, in the jungles of Central America, the remains of the Maya and Olmec civilizations sleep beneath vines and soil. Their cities were reclaimed by the forest in only a few centuries, a vivid demonstration of how quickly nature forgets. If such monumental cultures can vanish in the blink of an eye, how many others, older and smaller, might have disappeared without a trace? The earth hides her secrets well. Sometimes the concealment is gentle, like sand slowly covering a footprint. Sometimes it is violent, an earthquake, a flood, a volcanic eruption sealing entire landscapes beneath ash. In 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius buried Pompeii, freezing an entire moment of Roman life in stone and cinder. We marvel at its preservation, yet in geological terms, 2,000 years is nothing. Given a few million, even Pompeii will fade completely. Imagine a civilization far older than any we know, facing its own catastrophe. If it perished tens of millions of years ago, its cities would now be part of the mountains, its machines minerals, its monuments indistinguishable from cliffs. To find evidence of it, we would need to look not for ruins but for patterns in the chemistry of the crust, an excess of carbon, an unusual isotope, a thin layer of synthetic compounds. And if we ever did find such a signal, would we recognize it for what it was? The Silurian hypothesis, proposed by modern scientists, explores exactly that question. If an industrial civilization had existed long before humans, would we be able to detect it today? The answer is uncertain, and that uncertainty is humbling. It shows how easily time erases even the loudest traces of life. When we gaze upon ancient anomalies, it is tempting to leap toward extraordinary explanations, lost continents, forgotten technologies, visitors from elsewhere. Yet perhaps the true wonder lies in the ordinary, in the persistence of human creativity, repeating itself across ages, rediscovering what was once known, inventing again what time allowed to fade. The same impulse that built Stonehenge may have built the temples of Cambodia and the pyramids of the Americas. The same eyes that watched the stars 5,000 years ago are the eyes we carry now, searching for meaning in the night sky. In this way, every anomaly becomes a mirror. It reflects both the mystery of the world and the longing within us to belong to something ancient. Whether carved by human hands or shaped by wind and tide, these places awaken the same quiet awe. They remind us that knowledge and beauty are not confined to one era, one people, or one definition of civilization. As evening deepens in your imagination, picture the earth illuminated by the soft light of countless forgotten fires. Across deserts, mountains, and islands, you can almost hear the distant rhythm of tools striking stone, voices chanting under the stars, songs carried away by the wind. All of them are part of the same symphony, the long, slow music of human curiosity. The anomalies we study are not interruptions in history. They are bridges, linking our present to possibilities that extend far beyond our recorded past. When we look at them with respect and patience, they teach us humility. They tell us that the planet is far older than our certainties, and that its story will continue long after ours is complete. As you breathe softly and let your thoughts drift, imagine these ancient sites resting in the dark, their stones warm from the sun, their shadows stretching like memories. They ask for nothing, demand no explanation. They simply exist, quiet and enduring, the earth's own meditation on time. And somewhere in that silence, between fact and imagination, you may feel a gentle truth forming. That every age believes itself to be the first, yet the planet always remembers more than it reveals. Every story has its pauses, moments where the music fades, the lights dim, and something vast shifts beneath the surface. For Earth, those pauses are the great resets. They come without warning, sometimes with fire, sometimes with ice. They end one chapter and begin another, wiping clean the traces of what came before. To understand how a planet forgets, we must first see how it begins again. The Earth has never been still. Its continents drift like rafts upon a slow-moving sea of molten rock. Its atmosphere changes, breath by breath, molecule by molecule, shaped by volcanoes, oceans, and life itself. Through this endless motion, cycles of destruction and renewal play out across millions of years. Each cycle erases, transforms, and creates anew. The first of these resets was nearly as old as the planet itself. 4 billion years ago, the young Earth was a place of chaos, bombarded by asteroids, its surface molten, its air thick with steam and fire. Yet out of that chaos came the first stirrings of life. Even in destruction, creation was waiting. Perhaps that is the Earth's greatest secret. It does not fear endings, for every ending is a seed. As time passed, continents formed and drifted, mountains rose and fell. And life, delicate but persistent, spread into every corner of the world until the planet shifted again. Mass extinctions are the punctuation marks of Earth's history. 5 great ones are known, 5 moments when life came perilously close to vanishing. The causes were different: asteroids, supervolcanoes, changes in atmosphere or ocean. But the pattern was the same. The world grew rich with life, then suddenly, violently, was made quiet. The most famous of these is the event that ended the reign of the dinosaurs, the Cretaceous Paleogene extinction. 66 million years ago, a rock from space, 6 miles wide, struck the Yucatan Peninsula with the force of billions of atomic bombs. In an instant, forests ignited, oceans boiled, and the sky darkened with dust. Sunlight vanished for years. The great reptiles, once masters of the earth, fell into silence. Yet from that silence, new life emerged, small mammals that would one day give rise to us. The impact left a scar, the Chicxulub crater, still buried beneath layers of limestone and sea. It is both grave and cradle, marking the death of one world and the birth of another. Standing at its edge today, one can almost feel the pulse of that ancient explosion, echoing faintly through the rock. But not all catastrophes come from the heavens. Some rise from within the planet itself. Around 250 million years ago, long before the dinosaurs, Earth experienced its most devastating reset, the Permian extinction. Volcanoes in what is now Siberia erupted for millions of years, flooding vast regions with lava and releasing enormous amounts of carbon dioxide. The oceans grew acidic, the air thickened with heat and poison. 90% of all species vanished. The Earth took tens of millions of years to recover. In those dark ages, our planet was nearly silent, a pause so long it could have erased any record of earlier civilizations, if such things had ever existed. Entire mountain ranges might have melted and reformed during that time. Had there been cities or machines, they would now be part of the stone, their memory transformed into chemistry. Each great reset is a reminder of how fragile memory truly is. If we, with all our satellites and archives, were to disappear tomorrow, how long would our legacy endure? A few thousand years for our buildings, perhaps a few million for our plastic and metals. But beyond that, the Earth would reclaim everything, folding our brief story into the grand cycle of creation and decay. The Earth does not destroy in anger, it simply moves according to its nature. Volcanoes are its breath, earthquakes its heartbeat, storms its dreams. And every so often, when conditions shift, the planet inhales deeply and resets the balance. After each catastrophe, life finds a way back. It begins in the smallest forms, bacteria clinging to rocks, mosses spreading over barren ground, coral rebuilding its reefs. Over millions of years, forests return, animals evolve, and the silence fills once more with sound. The resilience of life is both humbling and comforting. Even when everything seems lost, the spark remains. This rhythm, destruction followed by renewal, may be the same rhythm that governs civilizations. We too rise, flourish, and fade. Sometimes slowly, through neglect or change. Sometimes suddenly, when nature reminds us that we are guests, not masters. It is possible that other civilizations, perhaps long before ours, followed the same path. They may have built wonders, harnessed power, altered their world, and then vanished in one of these resets. The rock record would keep only the faintest chemical traces, a whisper of their passing. The next wave of life would begin anew, unaware of what came before. To imagine this is not to deny science, but to expand it, to acknowledge that deep time is vast beyond comprehension. Even the most improbable events become possible when given billions of years to unfold. The Cambrian explosion, over 500 million years ago, saw a sudden diversification of life after another global transformation. Before it, the world was populated mostly by simple organisms. After it, the seas teemed with complexity, shells, limbs, eyes, movement. Something shifted, as though the planet had drawn a deep breath and exhaled creation. Could such leaps happen more than once? Could intelligence itself be one of those repeating miracles, emerging whenever conditions align? We tend to view extinctions as tragedies, But in the scale of planetary history, they are transitions, clearing the stage for something new. If we look at them that way, they become less terrifying and more serene, part of a pattern too large to fear. Imagine drifting above the Earth as it moves through these cycles. Continents merge into supercontinents, then drift apart. Oceans widen and close again. Forests spread and burn. The poles shift, glaciers advance and retreat. From this height the changes are graceful, like the slow dance of breathing. Time flows not in years, but in rhythms of heat and cold, growth and rest. Our own age is not exempt. The same forces that shape the distant past still move beneath us. We add our own influence, carbon in the air, cities on the land, but in the end, the planet will continue its cycle. When the next great reset comes, whether by natural cause or by our own hand, the Earth will not weep. It will simply turn the page. Yet there is comfort in this inevitability. For if life can return after oceans of fire, after skies of ash, then nothing is ever truly lost. Even if our species fades, the planet will breathe again. New forms will rise, perhaps to wonder as we do now, about the ones who came before. At night when the world is quiet and you lie listening to your own heartbeat, think of the Earth's heartbeat, slower, deeper, older than imagination. Each pulse marks a reset, a renewal. Each breath of wind, each tide, is a reminder that life persists. In the hush between thoughts, you can almost hear it, the murmur of deep time, the whisper of continents shifting, oceans dreaming, volcanoes sighing in their sleep. The planet is alive in ways we can barely sense, its memory stored not in words, but in stone and motion. And perhaps in some far future, long after our age has passed, the next consciousness to awaken on this planet will look upon the traces we left behind, a thin layer of plastic and metal, a subtle chemical signature, and wonder, as we do now, were we the first? The Earth, patient and kind, will hold that secret gently, as it has held all the others. Some questions begin not with certainty, but with wonder. One afternoon in 2018, two scientists, Gavin Schmidt, a climatologist, and Adam Frank, an astrophysicist, sat together and asked a simple, unsettling question. If a technological civilization had existed on Earth long before humans, would we know? They called their thought experiment the Silurian hypothesis, named playfully after the reptilian scientists of old science fiction stories, and after the Silurian period, more than 400 million years ago. It was not a claim, but an invitation to imagine. How would a planet remember its intelligent children if it had already forgotten so much? The first realization they shared was humbling. The geological record, the strata of stone that chronicle Earth's story, is not a library of infinite shelves. It is a scrapbook, pages torn, rewritten, lost. The older the evidence, the less of it remains. Most rocks older than a few 100 million years have been recycled by the planet's restless crust. If an industrial society had flourished in the Silurian age, its cities would long ago have melted into magma or been ground to dust beneath the sea. So the scientists asked what traces might endure. Not monuments or machines, but chemistry. Perhaps changes in carbon isotopes, traces of rare metals, patterns in sediment that reveal warming oceans or shifting atmospheres, the same signals we ourselves are now leaving behind. If we can see our own fingerprints written in the air and soil, then perhaps we can look for older ones. Imagine for a moment the Earth as a vast detective story. Each layer of rock is a clue, each molecule a witness. Most testify to the slow rhythm of natural change, but every so often there is an anomaly, a sudden rise in carbon dioxide, a burst of temperature, an extinction that sweeps through the oceans like a shadow. To the Silurian thinkers, these anomalies were the possible whispers of forgotten industry. Not proof, not even probability, only the gentle reminder that deep time holds more possibilities than we can count. They studied the Paleocene, Eocene thermal maximum, 56 million years ago, when the planet warmed dramatically in a geological instant. Carbon spiked, ice vanished, oceans turned acidic. It might have been triggered by volcanic activity or the sudden release of methane from the seafloor, yet the pattern of change looked eerily like our own modern curve. Could that event, they asked, have been the echo of something intelligent? Almost certainly not, but the act of asking revealed how thin the line can be between natural and artificial, between geology and technology. In the silence that follows such questions, the Earth seems to breathe. Perhaps it has lived through more than we imagine, more than our brief species can record. The hypothesis does not accuse or romanticize, it simply observes. If we disappeared today, in 10 million years only the faintest traces of our presence would remain. Future geologists might find a thin band in the rocks, rich in plastics, synthetic compounds and carbon isotopes, a boundary marking the Anthropocene. They might debate what caused it, inventing names for creatures long gone, piecing together stories from fragments. Just as we now study ammonites and trilobites, they might one day study us. And in doing so, they would rediscover the same wonder that inspired the Silurian hypothesis, the curiosity to see ourselves through the eyes of time. The scientists' paper ended not with conclusions, but with humility. They reminded us that the universe is old, and intelligence may not be rare, only transient. Civilizations may rise again and again, leaving brief imprints on the worlds that host them. In that sense, Earth could be one chapter in a much longer cosmic pattern, a planet that remembers only through chemistry. Let's imagine their idea as a quiet experiment. We walk through a laboratory filled with light and dust. On the table lie cores of rock drilled from the seabed, cylinders of layered mud and ancient shells. Each color band tells a story: gray for calm seas, black for oxygen loss, red for volcanic heat. A scientist brushes away grains of sediment, revealing a sudden dark line no thicker than a hair. This, she whispers, is 60 million years of change in a single finger's width. Was it a storm, a volcano, or something else entirely? No one can say. The record is complete and incomplete at once. Outside the lab, the wind carries the smell of rain. Clouds move slowly across the sky, just as they did when the dinosaurs ruled, just as they will when our own monuments have turned to dust. The continuity is both comforting and small. The Earth endures while memory drifts. The Silurian hypothesis also turns our gaze outward. If traces of civilization are so easily erased here, what hope have we of finding them on other worlds? A probe orbiting Mars may photograph the outlines of ancient rivers, but would it notice the ruins of a city buried beneath eons of dust? On Venus, surface temperatures melt lead. Any artifacts there would have vaporized long ago. Even on worlds where life might once have flourished, the evidence could have vanished before we ever looked. Perhaps that is why we search the stars, not only for others, but for reassurance. To know we are not alone is to believe that consciousness can survive the vast resets of time. To know we might not be the first is to realize how precious the present moment truly is. The scientists who imagined the Silurian question were not chasing fantasy, they were exploring perspective. By comparing our current impact on the planet to hypothetical ones from the past, they offered a mirror. What would we leave behind? What story would the rocks tell about us? Would future minds recognize our brief age as the work of intelligence, or mistake it for a natural shift? Their answer was soft but profound. Our true legacy is the pattern we create. Not the buildings or machines, but the chemical song we add to the planet's rhythm. Every factory, every field, Every breath of fuel burned alters the balance of carbon and oxygen, nitrogen and methane. These changes become part of the rock record, the memory of a species that dreamed itself into existence. When the scientists published their paper, it stirred the imagination of many who heard it. Writers, philosophers, and dreamers took the idea further, seeing in it a metaphor for mortality. Civilizations, like individuals, have lifespans. They bloom, they change their environment, they fade. But the planet, like a patient parent, remembers them all in its own quiet way. As the years pass and humanity looks deeper into space, perhaps one day we will find another world bearing signs of a long-vanished intelligence. Subtle chemical fingerprints, atmospheric anomalies, traces of industry now blended into the soil. When that day comes, the Silurian hypothesis will feel less like speculation and more like prophecy fulfilled. Until then, we listen. We study the rocks, the ice cores, the sediments. We learn the language of deep time, letter by letter. And as we do, we begin to hear faint harmonies beneath the surface noise, patterns that remind us that everything, even thought itself, leaves a trace. In the quiet of evening, as you drift toward sleep, picture those scientists walking along a shoreline. The tide withdraws, revealing ripples in the sand that mirror the layered rocks of distant cliffs. Above them, the sky glows with the same colors that painted the oceans millions of years ago. They stop, listening to the wind, feeling the pulse of the planet beneath their feet. Somewhere within that pulse lies the memory of everything that has ever lived. They smile not because they have found the answer, but because the question itself is beautiful. The Silurian hypothesis is, at its heart, a lullaby for the curious. It tells us that forgetting is not the same as losing, and that discovery is another form of remembering. It invites us to hold our world gently, to see it as both ancient and newborn, filled with mysteries that need no solving to be worthy of wonder. And so, as you breathe slowly and the night deepens, think of the scientists who dreamed of ancient minds, and of the planet that keeps their secret. Whether we are the first civilization or simply the latest verse in Earth's long poem, the song continues. It hums beneath the oceans, through the forests, across the stars, steady, patient, and full of possibility. Across every culture, in every corner of the earth, stories whisper of worlds that once were. Floods that swept away cities, golden ages of peace and wisdom, cities lost beneath the waves, mountains that rose and vanished. These tales survive because memory is persistent, even when physical traces fade. They are echoes, the human mind's way of preserving the impossible, glimpses of something older than recorded history. Think of the story of Atlantis, first told by Plato over 2,000 years ago. A civilization of unimaginable scale and sophistication, swallowed by the sea in a single day and night. Whether Atlantis was literal or allegorical, the story itself endures. It speaks to a universal longing, to remember what is lost, to imagine what might have come before. Even if no physical evidence remains, the idea persists, a bridge connecting imagination to time. Many cultures recount great floods. The Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh tells of Utnapishtim, a survivor of a world-destroying deluge. The Hebrew Bible describes Noah's Ark carrying life through a global flood. In Hindu tradition, Manu survives a cosmic flood with divine guidance. And in the Americas, native traditions speak of waters rising and covering the lands, resetting the world. Could these myths be memory of real events, local catastrophes, amplified across generations into stories of global significance? Perhaps, or perhaps they are symbolic, ways for humanity to grapple with the fragility of life and the inevitability of change. Either way, they suggest that human consciousness seeks to preserve what the earth itself might quietly forget. Some stories speak not of destruction, but of ages of brilliance. The Golden Age, celebrated in Greek, Roman, and Indian texts, evokes a time when humans lived in harmony with nature, free from toil, wisdom abundant. It is tempting to imagine that such myths hint at a real, forgotten world, perhaps a civilization that flourished and disappeared, leaving only dreams behind. Even if entirely symbolic, the archetype of the Golden Age reflects the same pattern we see in the planet's long cycles: rise, flourishing, and inevitable change. Legends of lost continents, like Mu in the Pacific or Lemuria in the Indian Ocean, continue this theme. While modern geology shows no evidence of such lands, the idea persists in human imagination. These myths may preserve a cultural memory of vanished lands, islands swallowed by shifting seas, mountains submerged by tectonic change. Or they may simply be metaphors, reminding us that nothing lasts forever, and even the most solid ground can be transformed. The very act of telling stories is a kind of memory preservation. Oral traditions, passed down for generations, carry the essence of events long before written history. Rituals, songs, and myths encode knowledge about seasons, stars, floods, and survival strategies. Perhaps in these narratives lie the faintest echoes of older patterns, human attempts to capture what might otherwise have been lost entirely. Consider the myths of giants, found in Europe, the Americas, and Asia. Some speak of enormous beings shaping the land, building monuments, teaching humans arts and laws. Were these literal descriptions? Perhaps not. Yet the consistency of the motif across continents suggests a shared fascination with scale, power, and the possibility of beings beyond ordinary comprehension. In a world where cities can vanish and mountains can erode, giants may serve as symbolic placeholders for what the earth forgets. Some myths describe cycles, ages of creation, destruction, and rebirth, echoing geological truths. The Hindu concept of yugas divides time into epochs of gradual decline and renewal. The Norse tell of Ragnarök, an apocalyptic ending followed by the birth of a new world. Greek and Roman myths speak of cyclical ages, from the Golden Age to the Iron Age, where life and morality shift in predictable patterns. Though spiritual in tone, these narratives resonate with the scientific patterns we've explored: mass extinctions, continental drift, climate upheavals. The Earth itself moves in cycles, and humans intuitively sense them in story. Legends sometimes suggest knowledge lost to us, like maps of stars or instructions for surviving cataclysms. The Dogon people of Mali tell of beings from the stars, teaching them astronomy. The Puranas of India speak of forgotten technologies, cities that vanished under water or fire. We do not know whether these reflect historical events, symbolic teaching, or imagination. What matters is that they endure, proof that memory does not depend solely on stone or writing. Even in contemporary folklore, echoes of deep memory persist. Stories of underwater cities along coastlines, unexplained artifacts, and ancient giants are rarely dismissed entirely. They are recorded, studied, and shared. They remind us that human imagination is a vessel for what the planet forgets. We cannot recover every city, every civilization, every event. But we can preserve them in story, giving them life long after their material forms vanish. Some myths resonate with scientific anomalies we've already seen. Could tailies of sunken lands correspond to rising seas after glacial melts? Could legends of fire from the sky hint at asteroid impacts or volcanic eruptions? Perhaps these stories are indirect observations of real events, abstracted and refracted through generations. Or perhaps they are purely symbolic, metaphors for the cycles of life and death, creation and destruction. Human memory and planetary memory are entwined. The Earth records chemical changes, fossilized life, and tectonic movements. We record experience through story, music, and ritual. Together, they form overlapping tapestries, one physical, one cultural, each preserving patterns of life that might otherwise disappear. Even without considering lost civilizations, myths teach humility. They show that humans have always sensed the vastness of time, the impermanence of societies, and the smallness of individual lifespans. Our stories reflect awe, reverence, and acceptance of forces larger than ourselves, forces that have shaped the world for billions of years and will continue long after us. Legends also invite us to imagine possibilities. If an earlier civilization had existed, could it have inspired myths in ways now obscured? Perhaps fragments of their achievements persist in story, exaggerated and transformed over eons. Or perhaps the idea of lost worlds is simply a natural outgrowth of our curiosity, a projection of the mind's desire to see continuity in time. Either interpretation reminds us that wonder is a kind of memory, one that survives even when the earth forgets. As you breathe gently, consider these echoes. Picture the ocean swallowing islands, mountains crumbling into dust, stars wheeling across the sky unchanged. Now imagine a storyteller, centuries ago, recounting a flood, a golden city, or a giant shaping the land. That voice bridges the gap between then and now, connecting human perception to the vast, silent movement of the planet. Memory and imagination converge, producing something that endures where stone, metal, or writing might not. In every myth, we find traces of hope. The belief that what is lost can be remembered, that what is forgotten can return in dream or story. Even as cities collapse, continents erode, and life changes its form, the human mind preserves patterns, meaning, and wonder. And so, as you settle deeper into quiet, drifting between thought and rest, allow yourself to feel the continuity. You are part of a chain that stretches back through story, ritual, and imagination, a lineage of minds that have pondered the vastness of time, the rise and fall of worlds, and the faint possibility of civilizations we may never see. In the silence between heartbeat and breath, you may hear them, whispers of forgotten cities, echoes of vanished ages, and the subtle pulse of the earth remembering what it cannot entirely lose. Even if we never find proof, even if the planet's deepest secrets remain buried, myths remind us that memory persists. They are our connection to time beyond reckoning, a soft and enduring presence that outlives stone, dust, and even humanity itself. And as you drift gently towards sleep, imagine those stories stretching across continents, oceans, and stars, carrying the faint murmur of worlds we have never known. Somewhere in the echoes of myth and memory, the past continues to speak. As we look outward into the vastness of time, it is natural to look inward as well. We are, in many ways, the culmination of countless cycles of life and extinction, creation and collapse. We are fragile, brief, yet capable of imagination that reaches far beyond our years. In this sense, humanity is both mirror and echo, reflecting the world around us while leaving traces that may survive, however faintly, in the deep layers of the planet. Consider the cities we inhabit, their streets, towers, and bridges. In the span of 100 years, they may seem permanent, solid, eternal. But viewed against geological time, even the mightiest structures are but momentary arrangements of stone and metal. The earth will reclaim them, folding them into soil, eroding them with wind and rain, and eventually burying them beneath new layers of sediment. In 100 million years, nothing visible will remain. Only chemistry, subtle isotopes, faint anomalies in the rocks might hint that we once existed. This perspective is humbling, but it is also beautiful. It allows us to see ourselves as part of a greater rhythm, a series of events stretching far beyond our brief lifetimes. Our thoughts, our creations, our joys and fears, All are echoes in the broader story of life. Even if our civilization disappears, the Earth will continue, and in that continuity, our presence becomes a small, radiant spark in the grand pattern of time. We are not unique in this experience. Every species, every community, has left marks on the Earth. Dinosaurs, once the dominant life forms, vanished without leaving a message of intent. The first plants, mosses, and microscopic life forms endured, changing the atmosphere, laying the foundation for everything that came after. Our task is to recognize that we, too, are part of a long sequence of influence, responsibility, and inheritance. In the mirror of humanity, we see ambition, creativity, and curiosity, the same qualities that might have arisen in civilizations long before us, perhaps millions of years ago. If other intelligent beings walked this earth, they would have shared our fascination with understanding, building, and leaving marks on the world. They may have flourished and disappeared, leaving only traces that the planet's slow memory preserved as subtle anomalies, chemical shifts, or strange geological formations. Our curiosity about them is itself a reflection, a recognition that intelligence, once it appears, leaves a faint glow in the darkness of time. Our history is a mosaic of achievements and failures. Great empires rise and crumble. Technologies evolve and are forgotten. Knowledge is accumulated, lost, and rediscovered. The planet endures, and with each cycle life adapts, transforms, and continues. In imagining lost civilizations, we confront not only what might have existed but also what we are now creating, and what might endure after us. The Silurian hypothesis, the myths of lost lands, and the anomalies hidden in rock all converge to form a single lesson. Permanence is an illusion, but memory, in its many forms, is real. Memory can be chemical, etched into layers of stone. It can be cultural, preserved in story and song. It can be personal, held within the quiet mind. Together, these forms of remembrance shape the narrative of life on Earth. They remind us that even the briefest existence may leave an impression, subtle though it may be. Now, imagine standing on a quiet hill at dawn. Mist rolls over the valleys, light touches the tips of trees, and the wind carries distant whispers of rivers and oceans. Beneath your feet, layers of rock record millions of years of change. Ancient seas, volcanic eruptions, glacial movements, and the slow accumulation of life. In these layers, the Earth has hidden its stories. Some we know, others remain mysteries, perhaps lost forever. And yet, humanity has begun to add its own layer. The air carries our carbon, the soils bear our chemicals, and oceans record our presence in subtle shifts. Even in the absence of monuments, our imprint endures in ways that may one day be discovered by distant observers, whether human or something else, imagining us as a brief spark in the long night of time. This reflection can feel overwhelming, but it can also bring comfort. We are part of a continuum that stretches back to the first cells, the first forests, the first animals. We share with every living thing a common thread, the impulse to survive, to understand, to adapt. And in that thread, we see a mirror of what might have come before, what might arise again, and what we contribute to the ongoing story of Earth. Even as we contemplate potential ancient civilizations, we recognize patterns in our own. Civilizations are born, flourish, and fall. Some vanish completely, leaving only chemical traces or mythic whispers. Some persist longer, adapting to environmental change, yet still fragile in the face of planetary shifts. Our awareness of this cycle allows us to act consciously, to consider our impact and the legacy we leave. The mirror of humanity is both humbling and inspiring. It asks us to see ourselves honestly, fleeting yet meaningful, fragile yet capable of remarkable creativity. It asks us to recognize that the traces we leave, whether in stone, story, or atmosphere, are part of a larger conversation with the planet, a conversation that began long before we arrived and will continue long after we are gone. As night deepens and the world grows quiet, imagine the earth breathing beneath you. Feel the slow pulse of continents drifting, oceans flowing, mountains rising and falling. In this rhythm, civilizations emerge and disappear. Even those we may never know, intelligent beings long gone, become part of the tapestry. Their memory is faint, but it exists, like echoes in stone and whispers in legend. In the mirror of humanity, we also see responsibility. Our technologies, our choices, our stewardship of the earth leave tangible traces. Unlike previous life forms, we are aware of the consequences of our actions. We can choose to shape the next layers of memory with care, preserving balance where possible, or we can accelerate change, adding to the cycle of resets. Either way, our existence is a dialogue with time itself. The earth is patient. It endures through cycles we cannot fathom. It erases some things and preserves others, indifferent yet generous in its own way. We are its brief storytellers, participants in a drama far larger than our imaginations can fully hold. By reflecting on what has come before, from geological shifts to vanished civilizations, we gain perspective on our place in this ongoing narrative. In this reflection, we find both humility and wonder. We are not merely observers, we are contributors to the planet's memory. Every action, every thought, every choice ripples outward, subtle yet real. And even as the planet moves in cycles of creation and destruction, our consciousness allows us to perceive, to imagine, to care. So, as you drift deeper into stillness, picture yourself as part of this mirror. Your awareness, your thoughts, your dreams are threads woven into the fabric of Earth's story. You are linked to every creature, every cycle, every echo that has ever existed. And through you, the memory of the present will ripple forward, joining the past and the future in a quiet, endless symphony. Even if we are not the first civilization, even if the Earth has hosted intelligence long before us, our consciousness allows us to appreciate the vastness of time, the fragility of life, and the beauty of continuity. We are small, yes, but our awareness connects us to all that has come before and all that will follow. And in that connection there is peace, a gentle understanding that our brief lives are part of a story far greater than ourselves, a recognition that even as we fade, the earth endures, patient and timeless, keeping the memory of all that has ever walked upon it. So breathe, slowly and deeply, and feel the reflection of humanity within you. In your quiet heartbeat, in your imagination, the past and the future converge. The mirror of humanity is not only what we see in ourselves, but also what we perceive in the world, the enduring cycle of life, loss, and remembrance that stretches across eons. And as you drift toward sleep, remember, we are part of this story, brief yet meaningful, fleeting yet connected. The earth carries our echoes, just as it has carried countless others, whispering in the silence of time, waiting for those who will listen. As the journey through time and memory draws to a close, it is natural to pause and reflect. We have wandered across deserts and oceans, through mountains and ancient cities, into the depths of oceans and the layers of rock beneath our feet. We have imagined civilizations that may have risen and fallen long before humans existed. We have listened to myths carried across continents and generations, and we have traced the subtle rhythms of a planet that moves in cycles far grander than our lifetimes. All of these reflections return us to one quiet truth: the earth is patient. It does not rush, it does not judge. It records what it can, erases what it must, and continues its cycles of creation, destruction, and renewal with gentle inevitability. In this enduring rhythm, life, consciousness, and even civilizations themselves are but fleeting notes in an endless symphony. We are part of this rhythm, as fragile and brief as we may be. We breathe, build, imagine, and wonder. We record history, pass down stories, and leave traces of our presence in stone, soil, and sky. And yet, in the vastness of time, our cities, our monuments, our achievements may eventually fade, leaving only subtle markers, chemical anomalies, small remnants, perhaps myths whispered by future generations. Even if we vanish, the earth endures, carrying echoes of all who came before us and those who will come after. Consider the idea of lost civilizations. Perhaps they existed, perhaps not. The Silurian hypothesis invites us to imagine intelligence arising, flourishing, and disappearing long before humans ever walked the earth. It reminds us that permanence is rare and memory is fragile. Yet in contemplating this, we gain perspective on our own civilization. We see that intelligence is not necessarily eternal, that even great achievements may vanish without trace, and that what survives is often subtle, hidden, or transformed by time itself. Myths, too, carry this lesson. Stories of floods, sunken lands, golden ages, and giants are not merely entertainment. They are reflections of humanity's attempt to grasp the impermanence of life. They preserve knowledge and memory in ways that endure far longer than the fragile constructions of our cities. They remind us that imagination, like life, leaves traces, sometimes faint, sometimes vivid, that bridge generations and even millennia. Throughout history, humans have sought to understand the past, to make sense of the world, and to leave a mark that will endure. Archaeologists study ancient cities, geologists examine rock layers, astronomers chart the stars. All are participating in a conversation that spans eons, a dialogue between the living and the planet, between curiosity and memory, between imagination and reality. Even the smallest act of observation is part of this ongoing story, an echo that may persist far longer than we realize. When we imagine lost civilizations, we do more than speculate about the past. We reflect on our own impermanence and the impermanence of everything we create. We consider what kind of legacy we wish to leave and what will survive the slow, patient rhythms of the earth. Our awareness allows us to act with intention, to shape our environment and our memory with care, and to honor the cycles of life that have unfolded long before us. Every mountain, every river, every desert and ocean carries memory. The rocks remember volcanic eruptions and asteroid impacts. The oceans remember temperature shifts, currents, and the rise and fall of ice. Forests and plains remember the passage of species, the bloom of life, and the quiet decay of what has passed. In this way, the planet itself is a storyteller, preserving the record of what has been, even when human memory fades. And yet, memory is not solely physical. It exists in culture, in myth, in song, in the quiet thoughts we carry. It persists in the imagination, in dreams, and in the desire to understand our place in the universe. Through story and reflection, we participate in the same cycles of preservation that the earth itself practices. We are both creators and witnesses, adding our own verses to the long, ongoing poem of life. As we consider deep time, it becomes clear that we are both small and significant. We are brief yet aware. Our presence is momentary, yet our capacity to reflect, imagine, and understand allows us to reach across ages. We can learn from the past, prepare for the future, and savor the present, knowing that life's rhythms continue long after our own. Civilizations rise and fall. Mountains erode, oceans shift. Species evolve, flourish, and vanish. Yet through it all, the earth persists. And in its persistence, we find beauty, wonder, and the gentle assurance that the cycles of life will continue. Even if we are not the first civilization, even if others walked this earth before us, we can take solace in the continuity of life and memory. The traces we leave in story, in art, in science, in imagination, may endure in ways we cannot foresee. And in contemplating those possibilities, we cultivate humility, wonder, and gratitude for the time we inhabit. Now imagine the earth at night, bathed in moonlight. Oceans shimmer with reflected starlight. Mountains cast long, quiet shadows. Forests murmur with the movement of life. Beneath the surface, rocks and sediments hold the record of millions of years, while above, humans dream, imagine, and remember. In this quiet, you can sense the vastness of time. You can feel the weight and the grace of the cycles that have shaped life on this planet. And you can recognize your own small but meaningful place within them. Breathe gently and imagine the echoes of all that has passed, the rise and fall of species, the creation of civilizations, the stories told by humans and the earth alike. Let these echoes mingle with your own awareness, your own heartbeat, and your own quiet thoughts. In this mingling, there is calm, continuity, and connection. The earth will continue its rhythm long after we are gone. It will remember through its rocks, its oceans, its atmosphere, and its living forms. And through imagination, through story, through consciousness, we too participate in the persistence of memory. We are part of the ongoing dance of life, reflection, and renewal. As your mind drifts, feel the comfort in this enduring rhythm. You are part of a long story, connected to everything that has come before and everything that will follow. The echoes of ancient civilizations, the myths of lost worlds, the chemical traces preserved in stone, all remind us that memory is patient and wonder eternal. In the quiet of night, let yourself imagine the earth breathing, mountains rising and falling, oceans shifting, forests growing, and life continuing its endless dance. We are momentary, yet our awareness allows us to witness, to reflect, and to leave our own traces. And in that awareness, there is a gentle peace. Perhaps one day, someone or something will look upon the earth long after we are gone. They may see the faintest traces of our civilization, or they may not. But the planet will continue, patient and enduring, holding memory, beauty, and mystery in its folds. And in that continuity, we find a quiet truth. Our presence, brief as it may be, matters because we notice, because we wonder, because we care. So, as you drift fully into sleep, allow yourself to rest within this rhythm. Let the earth's slow, patient heartbeat guide your thoughts. Feel the comfort of continuity, the gentle persistence of life, and the quiet assurance that even in impermanence, there is beauty, memory, and wonder. And as you sleep, imagine that the earth continues to whisper its story, softly, gently, endlessly, carrying echoes of civilizations past, dreams of the present, and the possibilities of a future yet to come.